This story is titled, After My Fiancée Humiliated Me by Introducing Me as Her Casual Housemate to Her Colleagues because she was embarrassed of me, I left the party and presented her with a housing contract when she returned home, ending her free living arrangement, causing her to apologize with tears in her eyes, but it was too late. Hey everyone, I really need to get this off my chest. Things have gone completely sideways with my wife Natalie, 30F, recently. We've been married for 3 years and together for almost 6 years in total, but everything has changed in ways I never expected. When we first met, it was at this cozy coffee shop through mutual friends. She wasn't supermodel hot or anything, but she was definitely pretty. What really drew me to her was this confident vibe she gave off. I was instantly attracted to that. We hit it off immediately, exchanging numbers that day and starting to date a couple weeks later. The first few years together were honestly pretty awesome. We did all that typical couple stuff. Weekend trips to the beach, meeting each other's families. Her parents were kind of standoffish, but whatever. And just generally building a life together. We moved in together after a year, and I proposed on our 2-year anniversary. We got married about 8 months later. Nothing fancy, just a small ceremony with family and close friends. About 6 months before the wedding, we bought a house. My name's on everything since I paid the down payment from money I'd saved up working my ass off as a cybersecurity consultant. I was proud to provide that foundation for our life together. The first year of marriage was good. We'd both come home from work, cook dinner together, watch shows, just normal married life stuff. We had talked about maybe having kids in a few years, and everything seemed on track. Looking back now, I can see that things started changing maybe around year 2 of our marriage. Natalie started getting more into her career in public relations, staying late at work more frequently, attending networking events, and gradually spending less time at home. I was supportive of her career ambitions. I figured it was good for her professional growth and all that. I picked up more of the household responsibilities so she could focus on work, and I started paying most of the bills too. She said she wanted to build her career before focusing on money, which seemed reasonable at the time. It started with little things. She'd cancel our date nights last minute because of work. She'd be on her phone constantly, even when we were supposed to be spending quality time together. If I brought it up, she'd get defensive and say I wasn't being supportive of her career, so I eventually backed off to avoid conflict. We stopped doing things together on weekends. She was either too tired from work or suddenly had brunches and shopping trips with her friends that I wasn't invited to. I started feeling like we were just existing in the same space, not really connecting anymore as husband and wife. There was this emotional distance growing between us that I couldn't seem to bridge no matter what I tried. Last couple of months, something unexpected happened. She told me her friend group was doing this dinner thing at a new Italian restaurant downtown, and she wanted me to come. I was honestly surprised she even asked me to join them. It had been months since she included me in anything with her friends. I wasn't super excited about it since her friends are mostly these PR types who just talk about work drama and gossip about people I don't know. But I figured maybe this was her trying to include me more in her life. So we went to this dinner, hoping it might be a positive step for our relationship. There were about 8 people total at the dinner: Natalie, me, and 6 of her friends. The restaurant was packed and extremely loud, making conversation difficult. We ended up at this long table where I was positioned about 3 seats away from Natalie, sandwiched between her friend Kimberly, who was talking to someone else the entire time, and some guy I'd never met before who was glued to his phone. I found myself basically just sitting there nursing my whiskey, not really part of any conversation. Nobody was talking to me or even acknowledging my existence. Unfortunately, this had become pretty normal for these gatherings. I was used to being the invisible husband at this point. I had zoned out, thinking about a project at work I needed to finish, when I heard Natalie's friend Brittany ask, "So how's married life treating you these days?" The way she said it was weird, like there was something behind the question, some hidden meaning I wasn't privy to. That's when I tuned into what Natalie was saying, and I swear it felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Natalie laughed, not a happy laugh, but this dismissive snort, and said, "Oh please, he's just my roommate at this point." Just my roommate. I literally froze with my whiskey glass halfway to my mouth. I mean, who says that about their husband? The way she said it wasn't joking at all. It was like she was stating some obvious fact that everyone already knew. She even glanced at me when she said it, noticed that I was paying attention, but didn't give a damn that I had heard her. What made it worse was how her friends reacted. They all laughed and nodded like this was completely normal. One of them even said, Aren't all husbands just glorified roommates eventually? And they all cracked up even more. All except this one girl, Jennifer. She's newer to their friend group, and I've only met her a couple times. She didn't laugh. Instead, she actually glanced over at me with this look like she felt bad for me. At least someone in this group has a soul, I guess. I don't even remember the rest of the dinner conversation. My brain was just stuck on replay, hearing my wife call me her roommate over and over again. I kept eating and drinking on autopilot, not saying anything, just trying to process what had just happened. The thing is, she didn't even look at me again after saying it. She didn't check if I was upset. She didn't care. It was like I wasn't even a factor in her life worth considering. On the drive home, Natalie was chatting about random stuff, acting completely normal, while I'm sitting there feeling like my whole marriage had just been nuked from orbit. I barely responded with one-word answers and nods. But she didn't seem to notice or care about my obvious distress. When we got home, she flopped down on the couch and started scrolling through Instagram like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just completely disrespected our entire relationship in front of all her friends. I stood there watching her for a minute, waiting to see if she'd say anything, acknowledge what she'd said, apologize, anything. But nope, nothing. Just more scrolling, more indifference. That's when it really hit me. Maybe this wasn't just a random comment. Maybe this is actually how she sees me. Just some guy who lives in the same house and pays the bills. Not her husband, not her partner, just her roommate. The realization felt like ice water in my veins. I couldn't hold it in anymore. "So am I really just your roommate now?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual even though I felt anything but. Natalie looked up from her phone, clearly annoyed at being interrupted. "What are you talking about?" she asked, as if she genuinely had no idea. "At dinner, you told your friends I'm just your roommate at this point," I said, watching her reaction carefully. She rolled her eyes and went back to scrolling on her phone. "Oh my God, it was just a joke. Don't be so sensitive. Didn't sound like a joke to me or to your friends based on how they all nodded along. That's just how we talk sometimes?" I pressed. "Well, it was," she snapped. "You're seriously overreacting. Can we not do this right now? I'm tired." And that was it. No apology, no explanation. Not even acknowledging how it might have hurt me. Just dismissing my feelings and making it seem like I was the problem for being upset about her reducing our marriage to a roommate situation in front of all her friends. I didn't want to escalate things because I was still trying to wrap my head around everything. Plus, I wanted to think about how to approach this whole situation more strategically. But one thing was crystal clear. Something in our relationship was seriously wrong, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. The next morning, I went through my normal routine on autopilot. Natalie was rushing around like usual, barely acknowledging me except to ask if I'd seen her phone charger. Just another normal day for her, apparently unaffected by what had happened the night before. As I was driving to work, I kept replaying that moment at dinner over and over in my head. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I've been busting my ass for years to build a life with this woman. I bought the house we live in. I pay most of the bills. I've been supporting her career by taking on more household responsibilities. I've been the one making all the effort in our relationship while she's been doing what? Going out with friends, working late, barely paying attention to me. And this is how she sees me. Just some dude who happens to live in the same house. By the time I got to work, I'd made a decision. If Natalie wants a roommate instead of a husband, that's exactly what she's going to get. I spent my lunch break setting up a new bank account and transferring most of our money from our joint account into it. I left enough to cover my half of the bills for the month, not a penny more. I used to pay like 80% of everything because I make more, but roommates split bills 50-50ths, right? When I got home that evening, I didn't ask Natalie about her day like I usually do. I didn't tell her about mine. I just said, "Hey," and went to the spare room where I've got my gaming setup. Usually, I'd wait for her to finish work and we'd decide on dinner together, but not tonight. I ordered a pizza just for myself. When it came, I grabbed a couple slices and went back to my game. Natalie came in looking confused. "Did you order pizza? Where's mine?" she asked, probably expecting that I'd gotten enough for both of us like I always did. I shrugged without looking away from my screen. "Oh, I just ordered for myself." "Figured you'd get something if you were hungry." She stood there for a second, like she was waiting for more of an explanation. When I didn't say anything else, she just went, "Okay," and left the room. I heard her in the kitchen a few minutes later, making herself something to eat. That was the start of what I now think of as Operation Roommate. Over the next couple of weeks, I systematically changed how I interacted with Natalie. I stopped texting her during the day to check in. I stopped picking up groceries for her. I stopped doing her laundry with mine. I stopped asking if she needed anything when I went to the store. I stopped telling her when I was going out or when I'd be home. I stopped making dinner for both of us. Basically, I stopped doing all the husband things and started acting like we were just two people sharing a living space, like roommates. At first, Natalie didn't really seem to notice, or if she did, she didn't say anything. She was still going out a lot, still working late, still on her phone constantly when she was home. But after about a week, things started to change. She came home one night and opened the fridge, then turned to me with this annoyed look. "There's like no food in here. Didn't you go grocery shopping?" she asked. I didn't look up from my laptop. "Yeah, I got my stuff. It's on the left side of the fridge." "Your stuff? What about the rest of the groceries?" she pressed. "I just bought what I needed," I said, still not looking at her. "Figured you'd get whatever you want for yourself." She made this frustrated noise. "Since when do we buy separate groceries?" I finally looked up at her. "I don't know, just trying something different." "Is that a problem?" She stared at me for a second, then just muttered whatever and ordered takeout for herself. I could tell she was annoyed, but she didn't push the issue. The real drama started about 2 weeks into Operation Roommate. Natalie texted me during the day saying she was buying these expensive shoes she'd been wanting, and her card got declined. She called me right after, sounding pissed. "Why is there only $700 in our joint account?" she demanded. "That's your half of the bills for this month," I said calmly. "My half? What are you talking about? And where's the rest of our money?" Her voice was getting higher with each question. "I set up my own account. That's my money from my job. The joint account is just for bills now." There was a long pause before she spoke again. "You moved our money without telling me? What the hell, Lucas?" "Not our money, my money from my paycheck. You've got your own job and your own money," I explained simply. "But we've always shared finances. You can't just change that without talking to me." She was practically shouting now. I almost laughed. "Yeah, and I thought we were husband and wife, not roommates. But apparently things change." "What are you talking about?" She sounded genuinely confused, which was amazing to me. How could she not connect the dots? "Nothing. Look, I put your half of the bills in the joint account. You need to pay that by the end of the month. The rest of your money is yours to do whatever you want with, just like mine is mine." She started saying something else, but I told her I had a meeting and hung up. I didn't have time for her sudden realization that actions have consequences. When Natalie got home that night, she was fuming. She stormed into the living room where I was watching TV and stood right in front of me, arms crossed defensively. "We need to talk about what the hell is going on with you," she said, her body language radiating anger. I muted the TV. "What's up?" I asked casually, as if I had no idea what she was referring to. "Don't what's up me! You know what's up! The money, the groceries, the way you've been acting. What's your problem?" She was practically vibrating with indignation. I shrugged nonchalantly. "No problem, just making some changes." "Without talking to me? That's not how marriages work," she exclaimed, throwing her hands up in frustration. And there it was, my opening. I looked her straight in the eyes. "Oh, so we're in a marriage? That's weird, because I distinctly remember you telling your friends that I'm just your roommate at this point. I'm just trying to live up to your expectations." Her face went through about 5 different expressions in 2 seconds as the realization hit her. I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out how to respond. "It was just a joke! I didn't mean anything by it," she protested, her voice losing some of its previous confidence. "Didn't sound like a joke to me or to your friends based on how they all nodded along." "Sounded pretty serious, actually," I countered, keeping my voice steady. "It was just girl talk. You're being way too sensitive about this," she said, reverting to her earlier dismissiveness. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally seeing things clearly. You've been treating me like a roommate for months. Barely talking to me, always on your phone, going out all the time without me. I'm just finally returning the favor," I explained, letting the truth of her behavior sink in. Natalie's eyes narrowed. "So this is what, payback? Real mature," she snapped. "No, just adjusting to our actual relationship status. Roommates don't share finances. They don't do each other's grocery shopping or laundry. They don't check in during the day. They live separate lives under the same roof. Isn't that what we're doing now?" I was proud of how calm I remained throughout this exchange, even as my heart was pounding in my chest. She stared at me, opening and closing her mouth like she couldn't decide what to say. Finally, she just threw up her hands and walked out of the room, muttering about how ridiculous I was being. But I noticed something interesting over the next few days. Natalie started trying harder. She texted me during the day. She suggested we order dinner together. She asked about my day too. Too little too late in my opinion, but interesting nonetheless. What she didn't know was that Operation Roommate was just getting started, and I was about to take it to the next level. About 3 weeks into my roommate routine with Natalie, something unexpected happened. I was grabbing coffee before work at this place near my office when I heard someone call my name. I turned around and saw Jennifer, that friend of Natalie's who had actually looked uncomfortable when Natalie called me her roommate at dinner. "Hey, Lucas, right?" she said, walking over with a smile. "Natalie's husband?" I nodded. "Yeah, hey Jennifer." She smiled, looking surprised I remembered her name. "Good memory. I didn't know you came here." "Their coffee is better than the office stuff," I explained with a small shrug. There was an awkward pause. I could tell she wanted to say something but wasn't sure if she should. I waited, not wanting to push. "Listen," she finally said. "I've been wanting to reach out. That dinner a few weeks ago? What Natalie said wasn't cool. I just wanted you to know not everyone thought it was funny." I was kind of shocked. Someone was actually acknowledging it instead of gaslighting me or making me feel like I was overreacting. "Thanks. Appreciate that," I said, genuinely touched by her concern. "Are you guys okay? I mean, not that it's my business." She trailed off, seeming unsure if she'd crossed a line. I shrugged. "We're figuring things out," I said noncommittally. No way was I dumping my marriage problems on someone I barely knew, even if she seemed nice. Jennifer nodded. "Well, I hope things work out. For what it's worth, I think you seem like a gentleman." That made me smile for the first time in weeks. It had been so long since someone had said something genuinely kind to me. "Thanks, Jennifer." We ended up sitting together for about 15 minutes, just talking. Turned out she's actually pretty cool. She works as a physical therapist, moved to the city about 6 months ago, and met Natalie's group through a mutual friend. She was easy to talk to, and it felt good having an actual conversation where someone was interested in what I had to say. Before we left, she hesitated, then said, "Look, I know this might be weird, but if you ever need someone to talk to, here's my number." She scribbled it on a napkin and handed it to me. I honestly felt it was a bit strange, like possibly crossing a line. I didn't know exactly what her intention was, but I thought I could use some perspective from someone who knew Natalie's friend group, and it also seemed like she was just being nice. "Thanks," I said, putting the napkin in my pocket. "I might take you up on that." A couple days later, I was having a particularly frustrating day. Natalie had been increasingly pissy about the roommate situation, complaining about having to contribute more to bills and accusing me of being childish. Then I found out someone had used our joint credit card, which I thought was canceled but apparently wasn't, to buy a $400 purse. 3 guesses who made that purchase. I was sitting in my car in the office parking lot, just fuming when I remembered Jennifer's number. I thought giving her a call might be helpful. Maybe she would know what Natalie was up to with her friends. So I texted her. "Hey, it's Lucas. Is that offer to talk still open?" She responded almost immediately. "Absolutely. Everything okay?" We ended up meeting for coffee after work. I didn't plan on dumping everything on her, but somehow looking into her big, warm eyes made it all come pouring out. The roommate comment, how Natalie had been distant for months, how I'd started Operation Roommate, all of it. Jennifer just listened, not judging, occasionally asking questions to better understand my situation. When I finished my story, she sighed deeply. "I don't know Natalie super well, but from what I've seen in the group, she talks about you differently when you're not there," she said hesitantly. My stomach dropped. "How so?" Jennifer looked uncomfortable, like she was debating whether to continue. "She complains a lot. Says you're boring, that she feels stuck." Wow. I didn't know what else to say. It was one thing to suspect your spouse didn't respect you, but hearing it confirmed was another level of pain entirely. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything," Jennifer apologized, looking genuinely concerned she'd hurt me. "No, I appreciate the honesty. Seriously," I assured her. At least someone was finally being straight with me. Before we left, she touched my arm gently. "Lucas, you deserve someone who's proud to be with you, not someone who treats you like an inconvenience." That hit me hard because she was right. It was the first time I actually saw Jennifer not just as Natalie's friend, not just as someone who happened to be around, but as someone who noticed me, who saw the cracks in my marriage before I even admitted they were there. We started texting after that, just casual stuff. How the day went, little annoyances, inside jokes. But it felt different from my communication with Natalie. It was like for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just talking to fill dead air. Someone actually wanted to hear what I had to say. No sighs, no eye rolls, just a real conversation with someone who actually gave a damn. I didn't realize how much I missed that until I had it again. Natalie didn't even notice my texting with Jennifer, of course. She was too wrapped up in her own world, still going out several nights a week with friends from work, and coming home late smelling like cologne that definitely wasn't mine. I wasn't stupid. I knew where this was headed, but I needed proof before I made my next move. Now let me get this clear. I'm not normally the suspicious type, really I'm not. I'd been cheated on before in college and promised myself I wouldn't be that paranoid boyfriend checking phones and stuff. But there's a difference between being paranoid and just connecting obvious dots. Natalie was showing all the classic signs. Staying out late, being secretive with her phone, sudden new work friends I never met, getting all dressed up for office meetings, plus that cologne smell. I mean, come on. I needed to know for sure, though. First, I tried the direct approach. "So who's this new work friend you've been hanging out with so much?" I asked casually one morning while she was getting ready. Natalie barely looked up from her phone. "What? Oh, just people from the PR team. No one interesting." "Seems like you're with them a lot lately," I pressed further. She rolled her eyes dramatically. "What? Are you monitoring my schedule now? I thought we were just roommates." She made air quotes with her fingers, throwing my own logic back at me. "Just making conversation," I said, walking away. Clearly, the direct approach wasn't going to work. So I made a decision that some people might judge me for, but whatever. I bought an AirTag. If you don't know what that is, it's this little tracking device Apple makes. You're supposed to use it for finding your keys or luggage if they get lost, but people use them for other purposes too. I waited for a morning when Natalie was still sleeping. Her car keys were on the counter like always. I quickly took them, slipped the AirTag into this little pocket in her car's center console where she keeps spare change and receipts, and put the keys back. The whole thing took maybe 30 seconds. That same day, Natalie texted saying she'd be working late again and not to wait up. Perfect timing to test my new setup. Around 6 p.m., I opened the Find My app on my phone and checked the AirTag location. It showed her car was on the move. I watched as she drove not toward her office downtown, but toward the fancy apartment complex on the north side of the city. Her car stopped there at 6:45 p.m. My heart was pounding. Part of me hoped there was some innocent explanation. Maybe a friend lived there. Maybe there really was a work thing happening there. But deep down, I knew. I watched her location for another few hours, and her car didn't move until 10:30 p.m. when she finally headed home. For the next 3 days, I tracked Natalie's movements. The pattern was obvious and impossible to explain away. Tuesday, she told me she was having dinner with coworkers, but her car went to the same apartment complex from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Thursday. She said she had a client meeting, but her car was at the apartment complex from 6:30 p.m. to almost midnight. The evidence was stacking up, and it all pointed to one conclusion. Throughout this time, I texted Jennifer, not telling her exactly what I was doing, but venting about Natalie's obvious lies. Jennifer was supportive, but cautious in her responses. "Are you sure you want to know?" she texted. "Sometimes finding out just makes things more painful." "I need to know," I replied. "I'm tired of being played for a fool." I decided to take the final step. The next Tuesday, when Natalie said she had another late meeting, I told her I was going to grab drinks with some guys from work and wouldn't be home until late. This was a total lie, obviously. Instead, I parked down the street from the apartment complex and waited. Sure enough, at 6:30 p.m. Natalie's car pulled into the parking lot. I watched as she parked, checked her makeup in the mirror, then got out and walked confidently to one of the buildings. She typed a code at the door and went inside like she'd been there many times before. I sat there for maybe 15 minutes, debating what to do next. Part of me wanted to storm in there, catch them in the act, make a huge scene. But what would that accomplish? More drama, more pain, and for what? That wasn't what I wanted. I just took pictures of her car in the lot and the building she entered. Then I took a deep breath and drove home. I now had all the proof I needed. My wife was cheating on me. The question now was what I was going to do about it. I called Jennifer on the drive home. When she answered, I just said, "You were right about everything." "Oh, Lucas," she said softly. "I'm so sorry. What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet, but I'm done being just her roommate." That night, I slept in the spare room. Natalie didn't come home until after midnight, and she didn't even notice I wasn't in our bed. The next day, I called in sick to work. There was no way I could focus on spreadsheets and meetings while my marriage was imploding. I spent the morning researching divorce lawyers and found one with good reviews who could see me that afternoon. I laid everything out for him. The roommate comment, the cheating, the house situation, our finances, everything that had led to this point. "So, what am I looking at here?" I asked after explaining the whole situation. He leaned back in his chair thoughtfully. "Well, you're in a pretty good position legally speaking. The house is in your name and you owned it before marriage, so that's likely protected. No kids makes things simpler. Virginia isn't a pure no-fault state, so her adultery could work in your favor. The main question is how contentious you want this to be." I thought about it for a moment. "I don't want drama. I just want out." "Smart man," he said with a knowing smile. "The ones who want revenge end up paying me a lot more money. Let's draft the paperwork. In the meantime, document everything. Her absence, evidence of the affair, financial records, and don't tell her you're filing until we're ready." I paid his retainer and left, feeling lighter somehow, like I was finally taking control of the situation after months of feeling powerless. When I got home, I had a text from Jennifer asking how I was doing. I suggested meeting for coffee, and she agreed. We met at this quiet little place a few towns over, where Natalie's friends wouldn't see us. She looked worried when she saw me. "You look exhausted," she said sympathetically. "Haven't been sleeping much," I admitted, stirring my coffee absently. "I met with a divorce lawyer today." Her eyes widened. Wow, that was fast. Once I knew for sure about the cheating, it wasn't a hard decision. "Our marriage has been dead for months," I explained. She nodded. "I get it, but it's still a big step." Jennifer reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Just a quick, supportive gesture, but it felt more genuine than any touch I'd had from Natalie in months. "What happens now?" she asked. "Lawyers preparing the papers. I'm gathering evidence, then I serve her and ask her to move out," I explained, laying out the plan that was forming in my mind. "She's not going to like that," Jennifer warned. I shrugged. Tough. She should have thought about that before cheating on me. We talked for almost 2 hours, not just about the divorce, but about everything. Our jobs, families, favorite movies, travel stories. It was so easy talking to Jennifer. There was no feeling judged, just two people genuinely interested in what the other had to say. When we finally said goodbye, she hugged me. "You're going to be okay, Lucas. Better than okay." For the first time in weeks, I actually believed that might be true. Over the next few days, I kept gathering evidence. I took screenshots of our bank statements showing I paid for everything. I downloaded records of Natalie's credit card charges, fancy restaurants I never went to, hotel charges on nights she was supposedly with friends. I backed up the AirTag location history. I put it all in a folder for Richard, my lawyer. Meanwhile, Natalie was completely oblivious to what was coming. She kept up her routine of coming home late, barely talking to me, and spending weekends out with friends. The audacity of it all just strengthened my resolve. At that point, Jennifer and I texted daily. Nothing inappropriate. I wasn't going to be a cheater like my wife, but we were definitely getting closer. She told me about her past relationships, her difficult family situation. I opened up about stuff I hadn't told anyone in years. She made me laugh when I didn't think I could. I thought it was nice having someone supportive through all this turmoil. A week after seeing the lawyer, the divorce papers were ready. Richard advised serving Natalie when she wasn't expecting it, preferably with a witness present. "You want someone there who can verify how it went down," he explained, "especially if she gets emotional or makes threats." Without thinking twice, I asked Jennifer if she'd be my witness. She agreed immediately. "I'll be there," she texted. "Whatever you need." I set the date for Friday night when I knew Natalie would be home. It was time to end this farce of a marriage once and for all. Friday came faster than I expected. I spent the morning going over the plan with Richard, making sure I knew exactly what to say and how to handle different scenarios. He gave me the divorce papers in a manila envelope that felt way too light for something so serious. Jennifer texted me throughout the day with encouraging messages. "You can do this. Stay strong. I'll be there." Simple stuff, but it helped calm my nerves. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop near my house at 6 p.m. Natalie usually got home around 7 on Fridays when she wasn't going straight to her affair partner's place. The plan was for Jennifer to come over around 6:30, then we'd wait for Natalie together. When we met at the coffee shop, we sat there for a bit, not really drinking our coffees, just killing time. At 6:25, we headed to my house. Jennifer's car was way nicer than I expected. Some luxury SUV that must have cost a fortune. I guess physical therapists made better money than I thought. We walked into the house, and for a second I hesitated. It felt weird having Jennifer here, Natalie's old friend in our space. Except it wasn't our space anymore, and Jennifer wasn't really Natalie's friend anymore either. I gave her a quick tour, pointing out random things just to fill the silence. She smiled that small, knowing smile she had. "You don't have to give me the real estate agent walkthrough, Lucas. I'm just here for moral support," she said lightly. I chuckled, rubbing the back of my neck nervously. "Yeah, guess I'm just not used to, someone actually wanting to be here." She tilted her head at that, like she was reading between the lines. Then, as we stopped in the living room, she suddenly reached out and straightened my shirt collar, smoothing it down with this small touch, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I froze. But the way she did it, so familiar, so casual, it made my stomach tighten. It had been so long since someone touched me with care instead of obligation. "There," she murmured, her fingers lingering for just a second too long before she stepped back. "You're all set." I swallowed, trying to ignore the heat creeping up my neck. Thanks." She just grinned, plopping onto the couch like she'd always belonged there. Anytime. And just like that, I started seeing Jennifer in a way I never had before. Around 7:10, I heard the sound of Natalie's car in the driveway. Jennifer and I were settled in the living room, the divorce papers laid neatly on the coffee table. Everything was in place. The front door opened and Natalie walked in, on her phone as always. She took a few steps before she noticed us, then froze. Her gaze snapped from me to Jennifer, then back again, confusion and suspicion immediately washing over her face. "What's going on?" she asked, her tone already defensive. "Why is she here?" I stood up. "We need to talk, Natalie." Her expression darkened as she looked at Jennifer again. "Why is she here for that? This is our house." "She's here as a witness," I said, picking up the envelope, letting her feel the weight of the moment before handing it over. Natalie's arms crossed. "A witness for what?" I held the papers out to her. "I'm filing for divorce." The way her face dropped was priceless, like her brain short-circuited, scrambling for a response. "Divorce!" she echoed. Then, as if grasping at straws, she scoffed, "Are you serious? Over your little roommate tantrum?" I kept my stance unshaken. "No," I said firmly. "Because you're cheating on me and have been for months." She let out a laugh, sharp and forced. "That's ridiculous. I'm not cheating on you." "Don't," I said, cutting through her performance. "I know about the guy at the Parkview Apartments. I know how often you're there." The color drained from Natalie's face. "You followed me? What the hell, Lucas?" I shook my head, amused at how quickly she shifted the blame. "Didn't need to," I said calmly, tapping my phone. "I have weeks of proof. Every late night, every work event, every girls' night out, all leading to the same place." Her eyes flicked to Jennifer, then back to me, her shock hardening into anger. "You tracked me? That's psychotic. And you brought her here for this?" She pointed at Jennifer, spitting the words like they'd burn. "She's been waiting for this moment since the day she met you." Jennifer didn't react. She didn't have to. I wasn't letting Natalie flip the script. "Jennifer has nothing to do with this," I said smoothly. "This is about you, your choices, and the fact that you got caught." Natalie's arms tightened over her chest as she shifted gears. "So I messed up. People mess up, Lucas. That doesn't mean we just throw everything away." Her voice softened, her eyes searching mine. "We can fix this. Counseling. A fresh start. I'll stop seeing him. Let's just talk about this alone." She cut Jennifer a glare, like she could erase her from the room with a look. That's when I twisted the knife. I leaned back, giving her the same blank expression she'd used on me so many times. "Why are you upset anyway?" I asked, my tone dripping with sarcasm. "I'm just your roommate, right? That's what you wanted." She scoffed, rolling her eyes like I was the one being ridiculous. "That dinner? You're still mad about that? Lucas, it was a joke." I nodded like I finally saw her point. "Oh right, a joke. Hilarious." Then I tilted my head. "Wait, so you do joke about replacing your husband with another guy? Just checking." Her jaw tightened, but I wasn't done. "You were right, though," I continued, my voice smooth. "We are just roommates. And since I'm the one paying most of the rent," I gestured toward the door, "I'm going to need you to pack up and get the hell out of my house." "House?" She completely lost it. She started crying, screaming, throwing things. The works. She called me every name in the book, then switched to begging, then back to anger again. Classic manipulation tactics that might have worked on me before, but not anymore. "Where am I supposed to go?" she kept asking, like it was my problem to solve. I don't know, maybe your boyfriend's place? You seem to spend enough time there already, I replied coldly. That just made her more furious. Eventually, she stormed out, slamming the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. Jennifer helped me clean up the mess Natalie left behind. That went about as well as expected, I said, trying to make a joke despite the tension in the air. Jennifer gave me a sympathetic smile. You did great. Stood your ground. Natalie came back the next day with her friend Kimberly, expecting to just move back in like nothing happened. I'd changed the locks though, so they were stuck outside, calling my phone and banging on the door. I didn't answer, just texted her that she could come get her stuff on Saturday when I'd have my brother there with me. She wasn't happy, but there wasn't much she could do. That Saturday was tense. My brother Curtis came over early, and good thing he did, because Natalie showed up with Kimberly and her dad. They probably thought they could intimidate me or something. Her dad started going off about how I had no right to kick his daughter out of her home. I just looked at him calmly and said, Actually, I have every legal right. My name's on the deed. I owned it before marriage, and your daughter was unfaithful. But hey, if you want to discuss this in court where all the evidence of her affair becomes public record, I'm game. That shut him up pretty fast. Natalie glared at me the whole time while packing her stuff. She tried the crying thing again when her dad and Kimberly weren't watching, whispering that she made a mistake and wanted to work things out. I just walked away. The divorce proceedings were actually pretty smooth after that. She didn't contest anything once her lawyer saw all the evidence I had. The whole thing was finalized in about 4 months, which is apparently fast for a divorce. The funny thing is, I heard through mutual friends that her boyfriend dumped her about 2 weeks after she moved in with him. Apparently, he was fine with being the side piece but didn't actually want a relationship with her. So she had to move in with her parents at 30, which must have been a pretty big blow to her ego. As for me and Jennifer, well, that's complicated. We definitely got closer through all this. We started officially dating about a month after Natalie moved out, once I felt ready to move on. Turns out Jennifer's pretty amazing, thoughtful, supportive, smart as hell, and we just click in a way Natalie and I never did. We're taking things slow though. We've both been burned before and don't want to rush. She stays over sometimes, but we're not living together or anything. She's helping me redecorate the house. Natalie's taste was always a bit much for me anyway. The other day, Jennifer and I were having dinner at this restaurant downtown when guess who walks in? Natalie with some new guy. She spotted us immediately and came over to our table with this fake smile plastered on her face. Well, isn't this cozy? She said, looking between us. Didn't take you long to move on. Before I could respond, Jennifer looked up at her and said calmly, He's not just my roommate, Natalie. He's my everything. The look on Natalie's face was priceless. She just stood there with her mouth open while her date awkwardly tried to pull her away. After they left, I couldn't stop smiling. Jennifer looked at me, a bit uncertain. Too much? She asked. No, I said, taking her hand across the table. Perfect amount. So that's where things stand now. Divorce finalized. House is mine. And I'm dating someone who actually gives a damn about me. Life's not perfect. Divorce is expensive and emotionally draining no matter how justified. But I'm happier than I've been in years. Sometimes I think about that dinner where Natalie called me her roommate. At the time, it felt like the worst moment of my life. Now, I realize it was actually the best. It opened my eyes to the truth and forced me to make a change I'd been avoiding for too long. It's crazy how things work out sometimes. That one careless comment she made led to the complete unraveling of our marriage, but also to me finding someone who values and respects me. Maybe I should thank her someday. Or not. I'm perfectly happy never speaking to her again. For anyone out there in a similar situation, where your partner treats you like an afterthought or a convenience rather than a priority, don't ignore those red flags. Don't make excuses for their behavior. You deserve better. And sometimes, as I discovered, being called just a roommate might be the wake-up call you need to realize you've been settling for far less than you deserve. I still have moments of anger when I think about the years I wasted with someone who didn't really love or respect me. But those moments are getting fewer and farther between. Jennifer has shown me what it feels like to be with someone who's genuinely excited to see me at the end of the day, who listens when I talk, who makes me feel valued. Would I have preferred not to go through the pain and humiliation of discovering my wife's affair and ending our marriage? Of course. But in a strange way, I'm grateful for the journey. If Natalie hadn't been so careless with that roommate comment, who knows how much longer I would have stayed in that empty shell of a marriage. Sometimes the most painful moments in our lives are actually doorways to something better. They force us to face truths we've been avoiding and make changes we've been putting off. For me, hearing my wife dismiss our entire relationship to her friends was that doorway. Walking through it was hard, but I'm so glad I did.